Exposed. 3 haunted hidden camera encounters that will chill you to the bone. The neighborhood of Cedar Falls appeared perfect at a glance. Trees swayed gently, children played in yards, and the warmth of summer evenings wrapped around homes like a comforting blanket. But beneath the surface, darkness loomed, an unsettling reality that Jessica, a 33-year-old single mother, was just beginning to uncover. After a spate of break-ins shattered the peace, she decided to take matters into her own hands. Hidden cameras installed throughout her humble home promised safety, but what they revealed was unnerving. At first, the footage was benign. It showed her 5-year-old son, Danny, laughing and playing. The soft glow of evening bathed their simple living room in an inviting light. But after a grueling night shift at the diner, exhaustion gnawed at her, and she replayed the tapes, hoping for reassurance. Instead, her heart raced as she noticed something peculiar. A door creaked open at 2:03 a.m. The clumsy shadows in the hallway danced like whispers in the dark. The camera, meant to protect her, became a portal to dread. Then came the night Danny sleepwalked into the kitchen, murmuring "Mr. Harris" under his breath, eerie calmness wrapping around his words like a shroud. Jessica's heart plunged. She knew Mr. Harris, the local cop turned neighbor, a smiling man who always offered help. She had trusted him with her son, with her life. But a chill coursed through her. Why would her son call for him in his sleep? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue with a mix of dread and desperation. Jessica confronted Mr. Harris the next day. He laughed it off, claiming he sometimes checked on Danny at night. A friendly gesture, he said. But the way he looked at her sent a shiver down her spine. Something wasn't right, and yet her need for community compelled her to accept his words and the vulnerability they brought. As days turned into restless nights, hidden camera footage felt less like security and more like a haunting. The whispers, barely audible through the static, promised protection in exchange for trust, unearthing ancient fears that lay dormant in her mind. With every sleepwalking episode, Danny's grip on reality felt fragile. Each night, Jessica's sanctuary twisted into captivity, a claustrophobic prison with shadows closing in around her. Cedar Falls held chilling tales. Legend spoke of a guardian spirit that thrived on the trusting and naive. The uneasy truth began to unravel, fueled by urgency. The lurking darkness grew closer, and Jessica felt it suffocating her, leaving her gasping for air. Then came the night Danny's whispers changed. They echoed, merging with a sinister voice. His hand stretched toward Mr. Harris's door. Then a sudden crash shattered the silence, a gunshot or thunder, she couldn't tell. Breathless, Jessica jumped up as the front door swung wide open, revealing nothing but an abyss of night, emptiness staring back with malevolence. The camera flickered, capturing the encroaching dread. Was the danger outside, or was it hidden behind her neighbor's smiles? As the weight of unseen eyes bore down on her, one question filled the space where hope once thrived. Could she protect Danny from the horrors waiting to break through? The clock ticked away, and she braced for a confrontation she could no longer avoid. Jessica's heart raced, pounding against her chest like a war drum. The darkness outside swallowed the faint light of the street lamps. She peered through the crack of the door, her breath shallow and quick. The silence pressed in, heavier than the night itself. "Mama?" Danny's small voice broke through the stillness, innocent yet laced with something she couldn't quite place. He was standing at the edge of the living room, eyes wide, a curtain of shadows framing his pale face. "He shouldn't have been up. Danny, what are you doing?" Her voice trembled, and panic clawed at her throat. He rubbed his eyes like he was just waking up, but then he smiled, a slow, disturbing grin that chilled her even further. "Mr. Harris checked on me," he said matter-of-factly. A chill slithered down her spine. "Did he? How often?" Her mind raced, grasping at the fragments of information she had gathered about their neighbor. A police officer turned friendly watchman. How easily she had let that concept lull her into false security. "Sweetheart, let us go back to bed," she coaxed, fighting to keep her voice steady. Danny was still too little to know the threats lurking in shadows cast by kind faces, but he shook his head, still smiling, though his gaze drifted to a spot over her shoulder. "No, Mama. He coming to play." Jessica spun around, eyes darting to the door, expecting to see Mr. Harris standing on the porch, perhaps wearing that tight smile. He always had a smile that, before tonight, made her feel safe. Instead, there was only darkness. She moved quickly to Danny, her hand gripping his shoulder, shaking him gently. "You stay right here," she insisted, her voice hardening. But even as she spoke, a creeping sense of dread coated her thoughts. What if he was right? Just then, the camera feed flickered back to life on the monitor in the corner of the room, casting a sickly glow. The static hiss filled the air, breaking the silence in a way that felt deeply wrong. She turned to look, feeling sick as she watched the video play. She wanted to see safety, but the images twisted and confusing revealed only flickering darkness, shadows shifting in ways that defied logic. The sound echoed through the feed, a hushed whisper that chilled her to the bone, weaving through the static like fingers gripping her heart. "Help me, did you hear that?" Jessica's voice was barely above a whisper, her eyes wide. Danny merely stared, his expression still unervingly calm, as if he was in on a secret she knew nothing about. Another crash, distant this time, followed by a muffled voice, urgent, raspy, begging. It came through the camera, laced through the air, pulling at her like an unseen force. Help me, Danny," she cried, the panic bursting through her calm facade. She shook him harder, desperation spilling into her voice. "We need to go now?" But deep inside her gut, a slithering doubt arose. What if these were just tricks of the mind? What if the horror was born not from the outside world, but from within? As she grabbed Danny's hand, ready to flee into the stark reality of what lay beyond their front door, she heard it again, Mr. Harris's voice clear as day, whispering through the faint static. "Let me in." Fear gripped her, paralyzing her instinct to run. Could she trust her own senses? Was Mr. Harris really here? With the weight of the camera staring back at her, she felt an unbearable choice looming. What if the very thing she needed to fear most was already inside? And with that thought, the air thickened and the shadows deepened, as she prepared herself for whatever was waiting just beyond the boundaries of her fragile sanity. The hum of the camera droned on, an unsettling reminder of the world beyond her fragile door. Jessica's grip tightened around Danny's hand as dread settled into her bones. "Danny, listen to me. We have to show Mama." His voice was like ice, sending tremors through her. "He here." In an instant, the air crackled with tension, and Jessica felt her breath catch, the adrenaline seeping through her veins like poison. The front door shook, rattling in its frame. "Knock, knock." Whispers slithered through the air like worms, writhing and taunting. "Let me in." Mr. Harris's voice oozed through the darkness, each word wrapping around Jessica's throat like a vice. "What should we do?" Danny's eyes, wide and innocent, searched hers, reflecting both trust and terror. "Stay quiet," she whispered, her voice barely escaping her lips. The room felt smaller now, closing in around them like the walls of a tomb. Something was wrong. So wrong. Mr. Harris had been so friendly, a neighbor they could count on. But the way Danny looked at her, that strange, knowing grin, it tore at her sanity. The pounding on the door escalated. "Jessica, I need your help." The urgency in his voice morphed into a growl. "Let me in now." Jessica hesitated, her mind racing. Help him? Would letting him in actually keep them safe? Or would it unleash something far more sinister? The camera flickered again, the feed distorting into an array of flickering faces, some familiar, some wrapped in shadows. She gasped, gripping Danny tighter as he squirmed, resisting the grip of fear that enveloped them both. Suddenly, the power in her home flickered. Lights blinked weakly, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. Then, without warning, darkness washed over everything, plunging them into a void. "Danny," she shouted, panic bursting from her lips. But the silence was deafening, swallowing her voice whole. "Mama, I can't see," he whined, his small voice trembling. She reached for him, her fingers scrambling in the dark. Just then, the door burst open with a force that seemed to shake the very foundation of the home. The silhouette was backlit by the streetlight, casting a grotesque figure. Mr. Harris stood there, but something was wrong. His smile was too wide, stretching as if trying to split his face in two. "Let me in, I need to show you something," he whispered, though it felt more like a snarl. Jessica stepped back, dragging Danny with her. "No. Stay away." She had to hold her ground. What good was safety if it meant inviting in the very thing that could destroy them? "Don't you want to help?" I'm struggling. His voice sunk lower, dripping with malice. "You'll be sorry if you don't help me." Danny tugged at her arm. "We have to, Mama. He needs us." "No." The word exploded from Jessica's lips, desperate and raw. She shook her head furiously, her heart thudding in her ears like a frantic drum. The darkness pressed in tighter, shadows creeping faster around them, twisting into nightmarish shapes, as if the walls themselves were alive, hungry for their fear. Just as her breath quickened, she stepped into the hallway, the light flickering back on, illuminating a trail of destruction. Shattered picture frames lined the ground, and an eerie draft whispered hauntingly. All at once, there was silence. The oppressive weight vanished, leaving only her pounding heart and the gentle whimper of Danny beside her. She glanced back at the door, half expecting to see Mr. Harris standing there. But it was empty. The shadows closed in on themselves, leaving only that lingering sense of something not quite done. Then Jessica stiffened. An ominous laugh echoed from the camera's feed once more. "I hope you enjoy the game," clenching Danny against her. She backed into the other room, dread clashing with a fierce resolve. If she wanted to protect her son, she needed to uncover the truth about Mr. Harris, about the whispers, and about the shadowy figures flickering across the screen. But what awaited her might be far worse than she ever imagined, a reality soaked in terror and inevitable dread. And as she turned, the dark thoughts coalesced, whispering a chilling promise of more to come. The pressing question caught in her throat. What if the game had already begun? The air once again crackled with unnatural energy, as if the very walls of their home were charged with an impending dread. Jessica felt shivers creep up her spine, her instincts screaming that they were being watched. The camera quietly blinked, its red light offering a false sense of security while transmitting their every move to an unseen audience. "Danny, we need to find a way out," she said, her voice trembling but firm. She reached for his hand, squeezing it as she gathered her thoughts. There had to be a back door, a window, anything that would lead them to safety. But the chill that filled the air seemed to sap her will, wrapping around her like a thick fog as they edged through the hallway. Jessica's resolve wavered. Dark figures flickered on the camera feed, their faces contorted in silent screams. She caught glimpses of horror from the distorted past, children, mothers, families, all twisted into monstrosities. Danny tugged at her shirt, fear radiating from his small, trembling body. "I don't like this, Mama." "Me either, sweetheart," she murmured, a lump forming in her throat. "But we need to keep moving." Jessica led him to the back of the house, each step echoing on the wooden floor like a countdown. She held her breath, praying that they wouldn't encounter Mr. Harris again. The back door was just ahead, but as she reached for the knob, a soft whisper blew through the room. Just stay. A wave of nausea crashed over her. She turned slowly, half expecting to see Mr. Harris, but instead, the distorted shapes danced like shadows under a flickering bulb. Fear gripped Jessica. They weren't alone. She could feel it. "Danny, no matter what happens, you stay close to me, okay?" Her voice was barely a whisper now, filled with urgency as she unlocked the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through her, and she shoved it harder, trying to will it to open. "Mom!" Danny cried, pointing, his eyes wide with terror. She turned to find a figure looming just beyond the hallway, a darker shadow than the rest, with empty eyes staring into her soul. It was Mr. Harris again, grinning wider, his decaying face now dotted with black, grotesque markings. "You shouldn't have tried to run, now you'll play. Get away from us," she yelled, seizing Danny's hand. They bolted the opposite direction, the camera trailing their frantic movements, feeding the unseen horror. They ducked into a room filled with dust and remnants of a forgotten past. Old toys lay scattered like forgotten dreams. Jessica turned to barricade the door, breathless, as Danny melted against her side, trembling. "Mama, I'm scared, she'll." "Just a moment." Afraid to hope, she pulled Danny down, peering through the grimy window. Her heart raced as she scanned for an escape, but the overgrown backyard felt like a prison, shrouded in shadows that twisted into menacing figures, like hands reaching out to grasp her. Just then, a movement caught her eye. A figure darted past the edge of the yard. A child? She squinted, trying to see clearly. That S when it hit her, it wasn't he, just Mr. Harris. There were more. A small group of them, all staring at her, all with those same haunting smiles. "You're one of us now," they called together, their voices merging into an unsettling chorus, an invitation she could not accept. In a panic, Jessica cupped her hands around Danny's ears, trying to drown out the noise. They wouldn't take him. She couldn't let them. "We need to get out," she said firmly, her voice steady against the panic rising within. But, as she turned towards the door, it swung open on its own. The laughing chorus grew louder, and Jessica's breath quickened. In that moment, she saw the flickering camera flicker again, and the words etched themselves into her mind. "The game is just beginning." Seconds stretched into infinity as she stood frozen. Outside, the figures began to move closer, their smiles full of malevolence. What had she done? She needed to fight back, to save Danny. Instinct gripped her, a fierce growl rising in her throat. And then the power surged back on, lighting the room in a stark, fluorescent glow, illuminating the truth glaringly clear. The figures were not just outside. They were within her home, surrounding her hungry, waiting. With her heart pounding like a jackhammer, Jessica turned to face whatever evil awaited her, determined to confront their twisted game. But as she opened her mouth to scream, the world around her went dark again. "Welcome back to the game," a chilling voice echoed in the emptiness, freezing her blood. What if the next round was already in motion? The darkness came in waves, thick and suffocating. Jessica struggled to breathe, her heart racing faster with every pulse of silence. Gripping Danny's hand tightly, she felt a surge of anger. They were trapped in this nightmare. They had to escape. But escape to where? With twisted shadows and grinning figures looming just beyond the darkness? "Danny, we need to find something. Anything we can use," Jessica whispered, her mind racing. The echoes of their frenzied heartbeats filled the void, competing with whispered taunts that floated on the stale air, promising despair. She searched the room. The battered toys, dolls with missing limbs, and stuffed animals with beady eyes watched them like silent witnesses to horror. A broken table leaned precariously in the corner. It wasn't much, but it could hold the door if they had to. "Help me," she urged, and Danny nodded, his small hands shaking with fear as he pushed against the splintering wood. Together, they maneuvered the table into position, wedging it against the door with a final, desperate shove. Just as they finished, a loud bang shattered the thin veneer of hope. The door rattled as if someone or something was hell-bent on getting in. Jessica froze, eyes wide, a cold sweat coating her palms. What if they get in? She whispered, panic creeping into her voice. "They won tea," Danny cried, but even he sounded uncertain. The darkness pressed closer, the shadows now throbbing with movement. The door trembled again, and she could hear the soft, mocking laughter seeping through the wood. "Stay quiet," she hissed, crouching down to his level. The shadows whispered sweet promises of safety, urging them to open the door. "We can play too," they called, a chorus of voices that tangled in her mind. Jessica pressed her back against the wall, her heart thudding loudly in her ears. They had to think. They couldn't give in. "I need you to be brave for me, okay? I'll protect you," she promised, trying to lift his spirits. But the reassurance felt brittle, like glass under pressure. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, illuminating the room in a harsh, fluorescent glow for a fleeting moment. In the strobe of light, she caught glimpses of the figures flanking the windows, their faces twisted grotesquely into wide smiles, eyes glittering with delight at their fear. It was a game, and they were the players. The flashes showed them just long enough for chills to race down Jessica's spine. "We need another way out," she said. She turned toward a closet at the far side of the room, barely able to calm her racing thoughts. "It's too small," Danny protested, eyes wide with terror. "Better than here," she replied, resolute. They had no choice. Jessica rushed to the closet, wrenching the door open. It groaned like a living thing, and the smell of mildew washed over her. She bent low, shoving clothes aside until she found a small window hidden behind layers of drab fabric. Was it big enough? "Mom," Danny whimpered, But she squeezed his hand once more and pushed the window open, frantically shoving the tattered clothes aside. "Are you ready?" she asked, voice shaking. The banging at the door grew louder, a rhythmic drumbeat of dread. Without waiting for an answer, Jessica climbed halfway through, shoving Danny ahead of her. They barely made it when a shrill shout pierced the air, sharp enough to send ice through her veins. "Don't leave, stay and play." Before they could register what was happening, a figure lunged at them from the shadows, trapping them in a snare of darkness and fear. Jessica screamed as she turned desperately to pull Danny back from the edge of that infinite abyss. Had they really escaped? Or was this just another level in a twisted game with rules that danced at the edge of sanity? As the oppressive weight settled upon them and the echoes of laughter encroached, she fought against the clutches of despair. On the count of 3, she whispered, terrified yet determined to break the cycle. 1, 2. Just as she prepared for 3, the world went black again, plunging them once more into madness. What other horrors awaited them on the other side of the night? Darkness enveloped them, a thick shroud that swallowed sight and sound. Jessica's heart raced, her breath hitching in her throat. Where once the laughter had come from the shadows, now there was only silence, a heavy foreboding that clung to her like a damp cloth. "Danny?" she pressed, but the weight of the void stifled his existence. Fear gripped her as she felt her way back through the closet. She had to reach him. The thought of losing him pushed her beyond the boundaries of panic. "Danny!" She could barely hear her own voice, and in that moment, she realized she was utterly alone. The whispers swirled back, more insidious now, a sinister lullaby that tugged at the edges of her sanity. "Stay with us forever," they coaxed, and dread poured ice through her veins. With trembling hands, she reached out again, her fingers brushing against something warm and solid. Relief crashed over her. "I'm here," Danny murmured, sounding so small and fragile in this nightmarish realm. "Let us get out of this closet," she said through gritted teeth, pulling him in close. They needed to escape the suffocating darkness. The closet wasn't safe, not with the way it felt like the walls were closing in. Together, they pushed through, forcing themselves out into the unknown. The room was bizarrely transformed in the deep black, distorted shapes looming where furniture once stood. Jessica turned, eyes wide, scanning for the door, any sign of escape. The laughter returned, louder now, filling her ears, each giggle a knife slicing through her resolve. Then she saw at the door, slightly ajar, like a gaping mouth, begging them to enter. She grabbed Danny's hand, pulling him forward. "We have to go?" But as they approached, the door swung with a creaking whisper, revealing only more darkness inside. Suddenly, the air shifted. The temperature dropped, sending icy fingers creeping down her spine. Shadows flickered in the corners of her vision, fractured faces and gleaming eyes watching them with twisted glee. "Let us play hide and seek," a voice echoed, sweet yet dripping with malice. "Run," she shouted, and they bolted toward the door. Just as they reached it, it slammed shut with a thunderous clap behind them. Jessica turned, heart pounding, and saw the shadow figures gather on the other side, their outlines pulsating with energy. "Stay forever," they sang, each word a tentative thread pulling her back. Jessica's mind raced. She had to resist. "No," she screamed, and in that moment, a surge of determination broke through despair. "We need a weapon," she shouted at Danny, but he just shook his head, eyes wide and terrified. The shadows pulsed closer, drawing on the fear that radiated from the two of them like a beacon. Jessica felt her body tense as she scanned the room for anything to fend them off. Her gaze landed on a shard from the broken table, jagged and sharp, glinting with the defiance of survival. "Danny, over there." She lunged for the shard, gripping it tightly. The moment her fingers closed around it, the shadows recoiled, as if her courage disrupted their sinister game. "We will fight back." But even as hope sparked within her, the oppressive laughter grew louder, a cacophony of taunts threatening to drown her senses. "You think you can escape?" they sang, their voices an echoing chorus that sent shivers coursing through her veins. Jessica steadied herself, turning to face the approaching darkness. "If we go down, we go down fighting," she declared, though her voice trembled. Just then, the room brightened, not with light, but with shadows swirling, forming a more distinct figure at its center. It stretched out a hand, fingers elongated, and smiled. Let us see how long you can last. Hope flickered dimly inside her, battling against the rising tide of fear. How much longer could they hold on? The terror built, and with hearts racing, the next chapter of their nightmare awaited. What horrors would they face now? Would they succumb or find a way to fight back against the looming dread? The laughter intensified, reverberating off the walls, warping into a grotesque melody that set Jessica's teeth on edge. She gripped the shard tightly, its jagged edge biting into her palm as she faced the swirling shadows. The figure in the center was now clearer, a grotesque caricature with hollow eyes and a too wide, stretching grin, a mockery of a friend. Let us see how long you can last, it repeated, the voice dripping with malice. Jessica's heart thundered in her chest. This wasn't just a game to them. It was a hunt, and they were the prey. Danny, Jessica snapped, eyes still fixed on the looming threat. Stay close. The boy's small frame trembled beside her. She could feel his fear radiating off him, a palpable energy fueling the darkness encroaching around them. What do we do? He stammered, squeezing her hand. She cast another frantic glance at the figure, wondering if it could see the panic in their eyes. We fight, she replied, trying to sound braver than she felt. Whatever it takes. She took a step back, dragging Danny with her, and their eyes darted around the room, searching for anything more than just the shard. The laughter twisted into cruel taunts, filling the air with echoes of other lost souls. Let us play, the shadows sang, voices weaving through the darkness like invisible threads, pulling them closer. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, Jessica noticed something, a glimmer among the debris on the floor. A broken mirror shard glinted with the remnants of trapped light. Without thinking, she pushed forward. Danny, over there. Grab it. They both lunged towards the shard as the figure lunged closer, the distance closing in an instant. Jessica could feel the chill of its breath, a fetid breeze against her skin. Danny's small hands clutched the mirror piece, and as he held it aloft, a flash of panic crossed his face. Look out, he yelled, swinging it toward the darkness. The moment the mirror caught the figure's shadowy form, a piercing screech erupted. It reverberated through the room, filling her ears with a high-pitched wail that rattled her bones. The figure recoiled, its grin faltering for just a moment before it regained its composure, shaking with anger. Cheaters! It hissed, the shadows convulsing violently around it, as if they were sentient creatures, writhing in fury. The room flickered, and for a brief instant, they glimpsed a glimpse of the walls, soiled with countless marks, scratches, groans, and vibrant colors of terror painted on the surface. Body parts? Get back! Jessica shouted, pulling Danny with her. They stumbled backward, and a sudden thought struck her. The door. We can make it to the door. But it closed. Danny protested, trembling. Then we'll open it. Ignoring the chilling laughter erupting from the shadows, they dashed towards the door, but as they neared it, the shadows surged, moving like a tidal wave, blocking their escape. Forever join us, they sang, their voices a cacophony of despair that clawed at Jessica's sense of reality. No, she screamed, surging forward, mirror shard raised. You don't own us. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Jessica swung the mirror shard, and the light caught the figure square in the face, emanating a blinding flash. It howled, a shrill sound that echoed through their minds, and for a moment, the shadows froze. Don't stop, she shouted, and Danny mirrored her actions, thrusting the shard forward. But the room shifted again, and the door began warping, melting into the wall, as if to mock them. Breathless, Jessica felt the energy around them shift, and the shadows began to rise up in a whirlwind of anger. For every step they took, the darkness pushed back, pulling them down as if wanting to consume their very essence. The laughter returned, drowning out their cries, disorienting them. You can't escape. As blood rushed in her ears, Jessica fought harder, her heart racing against the growing despair wrapping around her like a noose. We will escape, she screamed again, desperate for anyone to hear her declaration of defiance. But the shadows only grew larger, their voices swallowing her words whole. Just as darkness threatened to envelop them completely, something unexpected happened. A voice, different from the shadows, rang out above the chaos, deep and resonant. Prove yourselves worthy. What did that even mean? Who was talking? The echoes distorted, And in that moment, Jessica's resolve wavered. The ground shook beneath their feet, and the air thickened, pressing down on her. As panic began to seep back into her heart, a new question formed. Could they truly survive the horrors that awaited, or maybe their own desperation would be the end of them? The room pulsed, a living creature breathing down their necks as laughter twisted into a crescendo of chaos. The shadows hissed, a slithering curiosity creeping deeper into Jessica's mind. Prove yourselves worthy, the words hung in the air, wrapping around her thoughts like vines, squeezing tighter with each passing second. What does it want? Danny's voice trembled, barely a whisper drowned beneath the din of madness. Jessica could feel his fingers tightening around hers. She tried to swallow her own fear, but it pooled in her stomach like ice. We just have to keep moving, find a way out, she breathed, the resolve in her voice hanging by a thread. Ignoring the shadows writhing closer to them, Jessica surveyed their surroundings again, searching desperately. The walls continued to ripple and pulse, as if the room itself was alive, breathing with malice. Just ahead, a haze flickered in and out of view, scintillating with light. Danny, there! Jessica pointed frantically, her mind racing. It was a doorway, barely visible, shimmering with an almost tangible energy. But as soon as she set her sights on it, the shadows surged forward, blocking their path as if aware of their intentions. Get to the light, Jessica shouted, adrenaline flooding her veins. Gripping the shard with renewed energy, she propelled herself forward. Danny stumbled beside her, pulling her hand as they rushed toward the door. And yet, the shadows twisted and darted, pinning them in place. Dark tendrils brushed against them like icy fingers, sending jolts of terror coursing through Jessica's body. Let us through, she cried, her voice laced with desperation. She raised the shard again, its jagged edges collecting light like a beacon. The shadows hissed, recoiling from its brilliance, but not enough to lose momentum. Stop, let us play, the figure rasped, its voice vibrating through the air. It was closer now, lurking just out of reach. The grin crafted from shadows widened, every tooth sharp and glistening with a hunger that made Jessica's skin crawl. Danny, she yelled, not turning to look. You have to make it. Get to the door. No, I want to leave you. His voice broke, a sting of tears making her heart ache. But this wasn't the time. They couldn't dwell. She forced herself to steel her nerves. Just listen. I'll hold them off, she urged, pushing Danny forward. Go. Now. With a choked sob, he took a hesitant step, another, and then he sprinted. The act of watching him flee tore her apart, each flicker of hope flickering like a dying ember. Run, she screamed after him, brandishing the shard wildly in front of her, forcing the shadows back. The room shivered like a living organism, reluctant to lose its prey. Danny's small figure rushed toward the doorway, but suddenly a thick, claw-like shadow shot out, latching onto his leg. The boy screamed, a horror that sliced through Jessica like glass. Danny, she fought against the shadows, her heart a frantic drumbeat in her ears. With a primal scream, she hurled the shard forward, focusing on the tendril gripping Danny. The shard sliced through shadow like a knife through paper, and the darkness screamed in response, a horrid wail that reverberated through the walls. Keep going. I'll be right behind you. With tears streaming down his face, Danny unshackled himself and dashed through the shimmering doorway just as it began to flicker. No, Jessica shouted, swinging the shard wildly to hold the encroaching darkness at bay. The shadows shrieked, surging forward, desperate to reclaim their lost soul. No, I'm not done yet. The laughter grew louder, pulsating through her body, feeding off her terror. Just when she thought their strength might break her resolve, the ground shook harder, throwing her off balance. Prove yourselves worthy, the voice rolled again, echoing, but this time with a hint of urgency. A piercing light shot from the doorway, illuminating the room just long enough for Jessica to see the faces embedded in the walls, screams frozen in time, eyes wide with fear. Put me down. A chilling whisper coiled through her, not from the shadows, but from something deeper, something ancient. It felt like the very walls themselves were speaking, pressing in around her. No, she gasped, realizing the truth. Suddenly, a rift opened beneath her, a bottomless pit gaping wide. With a final scream, She lunged toward the fading doorway, desperate for salvation. But the shadows moved faster. They lunged, coiling around her form, and Jessica felt herself being pulled down. Deeper into the dark, would she find a way out? Or would she be lost forever, joining the countless souls trapped in this nightmare? Jessica felt the world unravel around her, the darkness tightening its grip like a vice on her heart. Panic surged through her veins, electrifying every nerve as she was dragged closer to the writhing void. The shadows twisted violently, altering shape, whispering sweet nothings that dripped with dread. "Help me," she shouted, not sure if the digested whispers around her offered any understanding. But desperation clawed at her throat. The pit beneath her churned with the echo of swallowed screams, a torrent of lost souls reaching out as if they could yank her back from the brink. Faces flickered by, their expressions a blend of fear and longing. The shards of their souls hung in the air, beckoning and warning all at once. "Jessica," they cried in unison, their voices melding into a haunting chorus that sent icy spikes of fear into her core. "No, I want to be like you," she screamed, forcing her limbs to fight against the blackened tendrils. She summoned every ounce of willpower she had, clawing at the darkness that sought to envelop her whole. Just ahead, the shimmering doorway flickered like a dying star, reminding her of Danny's small figure. She was losing her grasp on hope, a crucial bone turn in her struggle. With a final jolt of energy, she wrenched herself away from the chaos that threatened to consume her. The shadows screamed in frustration, thrashing violently as she flung herself toward the light. Just as she neared the threshold, the laughter returned, louder this time, shaking the very fabric of her being. "Prove yourselves worthy." The moment she crossed the boundary, an immense weight lifted off her, but relief was short-lived. She crashed onto cold stone, gasping for air, the light around her flickering ominously. "Danny!" she managed to cry, scrambling upright. The unbearable silence suffocated her. Where was he? Panic crested within her as the realization that she was alone in this new world settled like lead in her stomach. Her surroundings were stark, and alien bare stone walls flickered with morbid images, reflecting twisted versions of her fear. Figures loomed just outside her vision, only to disappear when she turned her head. They were there, but not there, shadows taunting her with imagined touches and whispers that made her skin crawl. "Danny, where are you?" She twisted, searching every corner, her breaths turning shallow and erratic. The shadows here felt different. They slithered with intent, deliberate in their approach. They wanted her to lose hope, to despair. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed in the distance, faint but unmistakable. "Jess, over here." Danny's plea spun through the ether, drawing her like a moth to flame. It was him. She sprinted towards the sound, heart racing, the shadows retreating momentarily as she charged through the fading light. "Danny," she shouted, her voice swallowed by the looming darkness. "I'm coming." As she rounded a bend, the shadows grew denser, thickening like fog. The laughter morphed into hissing whispers, sharp and insistent. "Worthy, prove yourselves, shut up." She screamed back, flooding her words with defiance, but dread still clawed at her heart. The shadows seemed to congeal, blocking her path again, twisting into grotesque shapes. A familiar face emerged from their depths, one she had seen on the walls before, forever frozen in terror. "Join us," it wheezed. Jessica's skin prickled with horror, dread spiraling in her chest. She had to resist, had to fight. "No," she hissed, panic giving way to desperation. She stepped forward, channeling everything she had learned, her focus on Danny's voice guiding her through. But as she pushed through the darkness, she stumbled upon a different kind of fear. The walls vibrated, moaning under the pressure of something darker than shadow. Something ancient and malign waited just beyond her reach, and she could almost see its form slip through the cracks. "Jessica," the whisper curled around her ears, chilling her to the bone. "Are you worthy?" With that chilling question still echoing in her mind, she pushed ahead, uncertainty flooding her. What would it take to prove herself? As she plunged deeper into the shadows, she found the doorway to Danny's voice. But was it a door to salvation or a trap? The tension wrapped tighter, pressing down like a weight on her chest. She gripped the shard now heavier in her hand, preparing for the worst. knowing the darkness would do anything to keep them apart. Time slipped away, but the question lingered. Would she find Danny before the shadows claimed her forever? The shadows twisted and convulsed around Jessica, warping into dark forms that danced mockingly, hungry for despair. Are you worthy? The voice echoed with an eerie calm, resonating deep within her like a drumbeat of menace. She clenched the shard tightly, determination sparking within the core of her being. Whatever awaited her here, she wouldn't yield. Danny. Her voice rang out, steady despite the tremor in her heart. I'm coming. In the thickening gloom, whispers brushed against her skin, urging her to turn back, to give in. Stay forever, join us now. The word burst from her lips, fueled by the fear that coursed through her veins. She refused their seductive promises. Danny needed her. She could not waver. She pushed through the darkness, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The walls pressed closer, vibrating with ominous energy that threatened to swallow her whole. Then, just as she thought she'd lost hope, she saw a flicker of light ahead. Hope surged, igniting her heart. Barely visible, a small door swung slightly ajar, shining like a beacon. Danny, she shouted again, her voice paralyzed by adrenaline. But as Jessica darted toward the door, a gust of wind seemed to blow from nowhere, slamming it shut with violent authority. The laughter returned, guttural and twisted, forcing her to hesitate. Prove yourselves worthy, the shadows hissed again, their longing dripping with malice. She had to resist. Heart racing, she steadied herself with fierce determination at the empty doorframe. Danny, she called, convinced he was near. Her fingers brushed over the jagged edges of the shard she still clutched, its roughness grounding her. Mom! His cry punctuated the shadow's taunts, echoing through the ghostly realm. She gritted her teeth and pressed herself forward. I'm right here. I'm not far, you can still reach me. The shadows tightened, swirling faster, forming a wall that pressed in around her, each whisper slicing through her psyche. But she wouldn't let them in, wouldn't let them take him. With every ounce of will she had left, she backed up, and with a fierce roar, she launched herself at the door, throwing her shoulder into the solid wood. No, you will not take him. The door burst open, and she tumbled into a space beyond an otherworldly landscape bathed in dim, writhing light. There, suspended in the distorted glow, she saw Danny, small and terrified, standing on the precipice of shadows, a frightened animal caught in the trap. Danny, she shouted, her pulse quickening as she rushed toward him, heart pounding in her ears. He turned, eyes wide, the shards of the nightmare reflected in them. She reached out. Mom, help me. Suddenly, dark tendrils shot from the shadows, wrapping around him with surprising ease. Let him go? Jessica screamed, clenching the shard tighter, its surface digging into her palm as she charged forward, fighting against the encroaching darkness. And then it all became a blur of movement. Jessica surged forward, swinging the shard like a blade, the glass catching light and reflecting it in every direction. It was a knife of hope cutting through despair. With every swing, the darkness shrieked, a cacophony of high-pitched wails filling the air. Danny, she cried as she cut through the darkness. Hold on. Danny's terrified gaze met hers as she lunged, managing to sever the tendrils wrapping around him. He dropped to the ground, disoriented but free. Go. Get out, she urged, pushing him toward the glow of the door. A horrifying roar erupted as the shadows fought back, trying to reclaim their lost prey. No, Jessica yelled fiercely. Not today. Summoning every last vestige of strength, she brandished the shard with unyielding tenacity. Light burst forth, isolating the edges of her reality from the thick darkness. With a final cry, she pushed through the blackness, grabbing Danny's hand tightly. Together, they bolted toward the glowing door, hearts pounding together. The shadows recoiled, vaporizing in their wake. As they reached the threshold, Jessica felt the chilling grip of the shadows releasing her. Stay with me. Danny, she pleaded, her voice steady despite the cacophony behind them. They burst through the door together, and suddenly, daylight flooded their vision, warming their skin. The golden rays of the sun wrapped around them, banishing the remnants of the shadow realm. Breathless, Jessica held Danny close, tears streaming down her cheeks. Did we make it? He whispered, uncertainty trembling in his voice. We did. She checked, her heart soaring through the pain. were safe now. Around them, the quiet sounds of life returned, the chirps of birds and the gentle rustle of leaves punctuating the air. The darkness was gone, no longer a threat in the warmth of Cedar Falls. Jessica held on to Danny like he was a lifeline. They defaced the darkness, and they had survived. With a deep breath, a sense of peace began to settle over her. She would protect him fiercely. They turned toward home, ready to embrace the light, to rebuild the love that had illuminated their hearts against the shadows that a new beginning was waiting for them. And as they walked home, Jessica made a vow that no matter how lurking nightmares claimed their shadows, she would always fight for her son, to ensure that darkness would never threaten them again. She smiled and squeezed Danny's hand, knowing in her heart that their love would always be the light. Now you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your love. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this breathtaking ending. Only true fans understand the importance of your support. Let us keep this journey alive.